Silence, all rise. The Supreme Court of Queensland is in session. Any person having business before the court, come forward, announce your presence, and you will be heard. Please be seated.
To join in this ceremony farewelling the Honourable Justice Anne Lyons, we are delighted to welcome Chief Justice Kiefel and Justice Edelman of the High Court, judges of the Federal, Family and Circuit Courts, Chief Judge Devereux and judges of the District Court, President Kingham and members of the Land Court, Vice President O'Connor of the Industrial Court, Chief Magistrate Gardner and Deputy Chief Magistrate Gett. And at the bar table, of course, we have the Attorney General, Ms Fentiman, the Solicitor General, Mr Thompson, the President of the Bar Association, Mr Sullivan, and the President of the Law Society, Ms Shearer. In the audience, we welcome the Shadow Attorney General, Mr Nichols, a number of our retired colleagues, and many other distinguished guests from the profession, the Academy, and the Department of Justice and other government agencies. And very importantly, there are the special personal guests of Her Honour, her husband and our former colleague, Peter Lyons, her son James Lyons, who is sitting amongst the members of the bar, and her daughter-in-law, Ms Giselle Kilvert, a former associate in this court. Joining us virtually are her sons Tom and Joe, respectively in Berlin and London, and less glamorously, Michael in lockdown in Sydney with his wife Jill Kingston. As well, there are a number of friends of Her Honour who have accompanied her on the various stages of her long legal career. In the front row, we have many of Her Honour's former associates, and others join us by video link. And while I'm speaking of matters virtual, I should mention that Justice Henry joins us by video link from Cairns, and we're also streaming to courts in Townsville, Rockhampton and Maroochydore. The ceremony is also accessible on PEXIP, and I know that there are many people who have been of great importance to Her Honour in her life and in her career who are joining us in that way today. There are a number of apologies. I won't refer to all of them, but Justice Keane of the High Court is one. Justice Philip McMurdo and former President McMurdo are others, and there are many of our retired colleagues, including former Justice Chesterman, Justice Cullinane and Justice Margaret Wilson. I'm very glad we can all be here today to celebrate the career of this remarkable judge. The event so nearly didn't happen for a couple of reasons. One obstacle was COVID and the risk of a lockdown. As it is, restrictions have thinned the numbers who can be in this courtroom, and there are, as a result, 2 overflow courtrooms being used today. The other obstacle was Her Honour, who was very resistant to being feted in any way. It was only when I pointed out that there was nothing stopping the court from holding a valedictory ceremony in the absence of its subject, but it would look quite odd if she were alone in her chambers upstairs while we were all down here talking about her, that she relented. Her reluctance to be honoured is typical of her humility. She's always been incapable of recognising quite what a vital role she has played on this court. Justice Lyons, you were a law student a while ago, one of very few women students in the UQ law faculty at the time, and while a student, you met your life partner, Peter Lyons, in what ultimately became one of those judicial marriages which are a quirk of the Queensland Supreme Court. On my calculations, it's 44 years since you were admitted as a solicitor, and you worked then for a couple of years in criminal, civil and family law litigation, and I think we're particularly attracted to the criminal law. But you then had 4 sons in quick succession. 2 of them are now barristers, practising respectively in Brisbane and Sydney. The other 2 are working, arguably more excitingly, as a sommelier and a musician in Berlin and London, respectively. It's an interesting mix, but not so surprising when one considers the way you've combined being a lawyer at the top of your profession with an interest and involvement in the arts and a knowledge of exactly where the best rooftop bar can be found in every major city in the Western world. I promised I would not mention martinis, and I haven't. You combined child rearing with part-time work in law, lecturing at QUT and, amongst other things, constitutional law, becoming a member of the Social Security Appeals Tribunal, and also undertaking a variety of roles in community and church organisations. When the Guardianship and Administrative Tribunal was established in 2000, you became its inaugural president and steered it through its first years of existence, which meant setting up the procedures for a brand new jurisdiction and managing a large organisation which conducted hearings all over Queensland. A former Attorney-General described you in that role as a very confident and competent guiding hand, which is a description we on this court recognise, having seen that kind of organisational skill reflected in your work here. I have reflected that your gift for organisation probably comes from the fact that you were the second eldest of 9 children. You were sworn in as a judge 15 years ago. It's fair to say that the bar was not enthusiastic about your appointment because you were a solicitor and your recent experience had been presiding over a tribunal rather than a court. I think it's also fair to say that views have moved 180 degrees since then. When you became a judge, you won over the critics by sheer hard work. You always took on whatever work you were asked to do and much more. No one has ever heard you say, "I've got so much to do, can't someone else do that?" Your interest in criminal law emerged again during your judicial career. You were president of the Mental Health Court over some years, and then you were the criminal list judge, where your organising ability came to the fore once more. You've also managed some of the largest, most complex criminal trials in this state. In 2017, you became our senior judge administrator, a role which you filled superbly. You managed the administrative aspect of it with ease, calendaring, chairing multiple meetings, coming up with innovative ideas for case management. And you've combined with it a pastoral touch, a real empathy for the judges who are your colleagues and for the registry staff with whom you deal regularly. I've often been astonished by the amount you know about people, not in an alarming way, in a caring way. You've got that knack of knowing what's going on in everybody's life, and you know not only the names of everybody's children, but also everybody's grandchildren and when their birthdays are. And, of course, the last 18 months have seen what nobody could have predicted, COVID. You've played a pivotal role in seeing this court through a bleak period in comparatively fine style, which in turn has done a great deal to bolster the fortunes of the legal profession in this state. More than one barrister has remarked to me too on how Justice Lyons' fortitude and optimism helped them get through a very grim patch in the early part of last year when it seemed as though the criminal bar in particular was doomed. There is a particular cohort present in the courtroom today which has regularly been involved with Her Honour in the past year and a half in wrestling with the exigencies of COVID. I've already mentioned in acknowledgements the Chief Judge, the Chief and Deputy Magistrates, and the Presidents of the Bar and Law Society, but that group also includes Justice Byrne and Judge Smith, Mr Mackey, the Director-General, Ms Lang, the Deputy Director-General, Commissioner Paul Stewart of Corrective Services and Ms Miles from that department, Mr Heaton, the Director of Public Prosecutions, Ms Davies, the CEO of Legal Aid, and Mr Delaboltis, the Senior Director of Legal Practice, and also Julie Steele, the Executive Director of Courts. They are all here today. And all of us in those COVID working groups learned to appreciate your dynamism and determination. You've always been quick to make the necessary adjustments, to liaise with the profession and the law enforcement agencies, and to use initiative to make sure that the courts kept working to the greatest extent possible. One of my enduring memories of last year is of Justice Lyons trawling through the dusty storerooms of the courthouse, exploring judges' chambers to find furniture that we could use to set up courtrooms with jury spacing to allow jury trials to resume. She found tables in all sorts of odd corners. She would have made a very fine second-hand furniture dealer, but her career has been elsewhere. Over the pandemic, Justice Lyons, you have given the court and the profession a great deal of your own time, because all the dramas always seem to happen on the weekends, and your energy. You now deserve to step back a little and enjoy other things, like moving house. We will miss your contribution to the work of the court, but also your contribution to its collegiality and friendliness. It's not often that when a judge announces their retirement, one encounters weeping colleagues and staff in the corridor, but in your case, that was true. We will all miss you terribly. Attorney General.
May it please the Court. Can I start by respectfully acknowledging the traditional owners of the land on which we meet, the Turrbal and Yagara people, and pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging. Can I acknowledge the Chief Justice and thank her for the opportunity to be here today, and I echo the acknowledgements made by Her Honour and extend my welcome to judicial officers, representatives and members of the legal profession, and the family and friends of the Honourable Justice Anne Lyons. And of course, I'd like to acknowledge the Honourable Justice Anne Lyons herself. As the Attorney-General and Minister for Justice, as well as the Minister for Women, it gives me great pleasure to be here today to celebrate the distinguished career of the Honourable Justice Anne Lyons of the Supreme Court of Queensland, and to thank you for the high level of service and tireless commitment you have given to our state. With role models like Justice Lyons to look up to, it is heartening to know that young women considering careers in the law have had your honour to inspire them to reach the very top of their profession. I recall Your Honour's swearing-in ceremony where I sat as a young associate with a front row view to Your Honour's appointment to this court, and it had a significant impact on me as I witnessed Queensland's first woman, Attorney-General, Linda Lavart, welcome Your Honour to the bench. And like many in the room today, I suspect, I also remember the occasion for the, let's say, differing views that were expressed by some members of the profession about Your Honour's appointment. The overwhelming majority of views expressed by members of the profession today is that Your Honour is compassionate, astute, empathetic, and with a discerning mind for judicial decision-making. And I'm told that counsel were always happy to appear in your court. A graduate of the University of Queensland, Your Honour commenced your career as a solicitor of the Supreme Court of Queensland with McCrossan, Byrne and Co., principally practising in criminal law and civil litigation. In the late 70s and early 80s, Your Honour branched out as a legal academic, educating the next generation of legal professionals by tutoring and lecturing in constitutional law and contract law at the Queensland University of Technology's Law School and Built Environment School. During that time, Your Honour also served as a canon lawyer and as an assistant judge on the Brisbane Catholic Archdiocese Regional Matrimonial Tribunal. And later you took up a role at the Queensland Law Society, where you became an accredited mediator in 1993. Following this, you worked as an anti-discrimination lawyer with Queensland Rail, became a legal member of the Social Security Appeals Tribunal, and then a legal member of the panel of assessors under the Health Practitioners Professional Standards Act. And amongst all of this, Your Honour also managed to graduate with a Master of Laws from the Queensland University of Technology. In 2000, Your Honour was appointed as the inaugural President of the Guardianship and Administration Tribunal, a position you held for the next 6 years. Your Honour was appointed by former Attorney-General Matt Foley, who is also with us today, to celebrate your distinguished career. On Your Honour's dedication to the Tribunal, Mr Foley said, "Her contribution was truly magnificent. That tribunal revolutionised access to justice for Queenslanders with decision-making incapacity." At the Tribunal, Your Honour presided over a number of complex and sensitive matters that often came before the Tribunal, including end-of-life decisions, termination of pregnancy, and complex financial management cases. During this time, Your Honour's contribution to the legal profession, as well as the advancement of women in the law, was formally recognised when Your Honour was awarded the 2004 Woman Lawyer of the Year by the Women Lawyers Association of Queensland. In July 2006, Your Honour was appointed as a judge of the Supreme Court of Queensland, and as the former Chief Justice, the Honourable Paul de Jersey, noted in his welcoming speech at the time, Your Honour was the 100th appointee in the court's 145-year history. Then President of the Women Lawyers Association of Queensland, Samantha Kane, applauded this appointment, along with those of their honours, Catherine Holmes and Fleur Kingham, saying, "These women are highly respected and experienced lawyers who have demonstrated the capacity to make well-reasoned, sensible decisions in often complex and challenging cases." And this is exactly what Your Honour continued to do. In Your Honour's new role, you cemented yourself as a dedicated and diligent judicial officer, working tirelessly in administering justice for the Queensland community. In 2017, in recognition of Your Honour's unwavering service, you were elevated to the position of Senior Judge Administrator, taking on the responsibility for the administration of the Supreme Court's Trial Division. And Your Honour has held on to this role to this very day, but will soon pass the baton to your Supreme Court colleague, Justice Helen Boscawen, who will assume the position from next week. In recent times, as we have heard, Your Honour has been instrumental in helping to navigate our court system through the challenges of the COVID-19 pandemic. In those early days of the lockdowns last year, along with your judicial colleagues and members of the Queensland Courts Administration, Your Honour helped work through the challenges our courts faced to keep the wheels of justice turning, despite strict new social distancing rules. All of us here in this room acknowledge Your Honour has had an incredibly meaningful career. Your Honour has been a pioneer for women in the legal profession and a wonderful mentor to many. Your Honour has shown that diverse experience brought from your time as a solicitor and service on a number of tribunals has been a valuable asset to the court. On behalf of all Queenslanders, I thank Your Honour for the tireless commitment you have given to the administration of justice in Queensland, and we wish Your Honour all the very best in your future endeavours. May it please the Court.
Mr Thompson. Mr Sullivan.
May it please the Court. On behalf of the Bar Association of Queensland, it gives me great pleasure to rise on the occasion of this ceremony for Your Honour Justice Anne Lyons. The Bar Association extends a particular welcome to your husband, the Honourable Peter Lyons QC, your children, James, who is seated at the bar table, Joseph in London, Michael in Sydney and Thomas in Berlin, and other members of your family who have been able to join us here today, both in person but also by video link. Your Honour, this ceremony marks the end of your illustrious career spanning more than 4 decades in the service of the law, 15 years of which you were spent on the bench. Today is a special occasion for the Association to acknowledge and thank you for your outstanding commitment to the service of the law in the community and for this state. Your Honour is well known to be a quintessential quiet achiever who does not welcome being singled out. But your achievements in the legal practice and as a judge of this court have been remarkable and bear special mention. Others have and will mention your career from solicitor, tutor and lecturer through to your appointment as the inaugural President of the Queensland Guardianship and Administration Tribunal, until ultimately appointed as a judge of this court in 2006 and Senior Judge Administrator in 2017. But it is not just what you have done that has set Your Honour apart, rather it is how Your Honour has done it, to which we would like to pay special tribute. Your Honour's time on this court has been marked by many features, but the Bar would like to highlight two. The first is Your Honour's industry. The tasks that present for determination in this court are varied and complex. Your Honour has approached them all with determination, be they complex commercial matters, highly publicised criminal trials, or delicate matters of personal autonomy. You have approached them with the same discipline of listening carefully, analysing critically, and drafting thoughtfully and precisely. Your Honour has produced carefully reasoned judgments in a timely way for 15 years. Only an absolute dedication to hard work and to intellectual rigour can produce such a record. Your Honour has never shirked your burden of the significant load in this court. Your Honour is quite simply the model of an industrious judge. The second feature we would like to mention is a matter very close to the heart of the Bar. It is a feature, if we may respectfully say, that separates a good judge from a great one, and that is your Honour's unfailing fair and polite and respectful approach to the advocates who appear before you. Court appearance can be stressful for litigants and their representatives. There is always much at stake, but the court gets the greatest assistance from lawyers who are properly heard. Fair, just and legally correct outcomes are normally the product of a fair hearing. Advocates in Your Honour's court daily have had the benefit of such an outcome. I hasten to add that industry and courtesy are not soft skills. They are the necessary qualities of a fine judge, and that is what Your Honour has been on this court for the last 15 years, and for that the Bar thanks you sincerely. In addition to your qualities as a judge, it would be remiss not to mention Your Honour's leadership in administration. The business of the court requires a high level of organisation at any time, but the challenges thrown up by COVID-19 have added a new dimension to the court administration. The Bar witnessed firsthand Your Honour's important role in keeping the wheels of justice turning since COVID descended in early 2020. Your Honour, the Chief Justice, the Chief Judge, other judges of this court and of the District Court, open dialogue with the profession and the court staff about ways to efficiently but properly utilise technology to the best advantage. Your Honour attended numerous CPDs held by the Bar, often at short notice, to give your professional guidance on the ways to navigate the court systems to best advantage. Your calm and methodical approach was reassuring to the profession and ensured the business of the court proceeded in a most orderly fashion. In the last week and a half since this occasion was announced, many members of the association have personally contacted me both in writing and orally about things that they wanted me to express to you. I've decided to quote from just one of the documents which I received from a senior practitioner in the criminal area. They wanted to pass on to you a few words about the depth of feeling that the criminal bar had about you. They noted what had occurred early in the COVID outbreak, and the writer stated, Justice Lyons, as one of those voices, took the additional step of attempting to actually reassure us. She reminded us that whilst it seemed like dark days were ahead, there would be work on the other side, and a lot of it. Her words were like a bridge between the court and us as individual practitioners. She knew our fears and she was seeking to allay them. It may all sound a little melodramatic on the other side of the worst of COVID, but I think you would struggle to find a criminal practitioner who heard her comments and was not similarly moved. That sentiment was repeated from all people across the bar in every practice area. No speech by the President of the Bar Association is complete without a small amusing anecdote. I started my search for such an amusing anecdote with members of the bar. It was fruitless. One silk told me, Your Honour is a vault and couldn't be prized open. I then turned to your family. I count your son James as a friend. His reply was how proud all your sons are of you and how much they respect you for what you've done. That obviously was not what I was seeking. Finally, I turned to your husband, the Honourable Peter Lyons QC. As a well-respected past president of this association, I felt sure that he would aid me in this task. All I asked of him was for one slightly amusing tale. After 3 days of silence, I was awoken at 6 o'clock in the morning by ping on my phone. It was the response. I regret to say I have not been able to come up with any amusing anecdote for you. I noted the time. With some concern, I pictured in my mind that he had secretly slipped into a darkened room to tap out this message to me. I responded to him, "Peter, are you under orders?" An immediate response, "There is no safe answer to your question." Your Honour, there is no greater testament to the love and loyalty of your family than their abject refusal to turn Crown's evidence against you. Whilst I haven't been able to come up with the amusing anecdote, I do note that Your Honour has a superpower which will be missed sincerely by this court. Your Honour has the most uncanny ability to remember names and personal details of those who come across Your Honour's path. And I speak not just of Your Honour's associates, the bailiffs, the court staff, and not just of barristers and solicitors who appear before you, but of every administrative officer, every member of the library staff, every court volunteer, every correctional officer, and every reader who has ever called on you. By the combination of a fine memory and a genuine interest of people, Your Honour has gathered a glossary of names and information to rival J. Edgar Hoover. The Bar Association of Queensland and its members thank you sincerely for your service to the court and the community. We wish you and your family all the best for the future. May it please the court.
Ms. Shearer.
May it please the court. It's a privilege to be here today on behalf of the solicitors of Queensland to acknowledge and celebrate the contribution of Justice Lyons. Your Honour's contribution to the administration of justice in our state has been a very direct one in recent years as Senior Judge Administrator. That role has proven perhaps more challenging than you might have expected when appointed in 2017. This is because for the last 18 months, as we have heard, you've taken a leading role in the court's response to the COVID-19 pandemic. On behalf of the Solicitors Branch, I would like to thank you for your commitment to consultation and working with the profession during this period. Your leadership has helped us all to meet the moment, to find solutions to novel problems, and to find a way to get the work done. This facility to find solutions to ensure the work gets done has been a hallmark of your career in the law and as a contributor, as a volunteer to so many community enterprises. Of course, all women admitted to the profession, as you were in the 1970s, who sought to combine a career in the law with a family life, had to be extremely clever at finding solutions to be able to pursue their career at all. The environment was challenging. No parental leave and virtually no part-time jobs in private practice meant that the attrition of women from the profession was, not surprisingly, high. To remain in the profession, women created their own flexible work arrangements, taking multiple roles outside of private practice. Your Honour's career includes such roles as an academic, in the public sector, as a tribunal member. You even worked at the Law Society for a time as a coordinator of our journal, a position far more humble than the many others you have held. In all your roles, whether in paid employment or as a volunteer, you found a way to get the work done and at the same time built a wealth of diverse experience. Your facility at finding solutions to difficult problems was recognised in your appointment as the inaugural President of the Guardianship and Administration Tribunal. In this role, you established in Queensland the jurisprudence in this complex and contested area of law. You also established a brand new tribunal with all the logistical challenge that entailed, and not just any tribunal, but one that was such an important access to justice innovation for so many people in difficult circumstances. It was at the tribunal that another of your talents became observable. Not only could you find a way to get the difficult work done, You did it with such equanimity and composure that it made a complex and difficult task look unexceptional. Of course, some recognised your exceptional contribution to the profession, and you were named Woman Lawyer of the Year by the Women Lawyers Association in 2004. Some were slower to recognise your contributions, and the controversy that surrounded your appointment to this court in 2006 is a matter of public record. You have proved at least one seasoned commentator on the issue wrong. On 15th July 2006, writing in the Courier Mail, Des Houghton opined, "Was the Anne Lyons appointment a mistake? We may not know for a decade or two." In fact, we knew very quickly that it was not. If your trademark composure and equanimity were tested, it was not apparent. You quickly found a way to get the work done in your new role. The next decade or two have merely reinforced the qualities that equipped your honour so well for appointment, equipped you to forge a judicial career of distinction. Your connection with the solicitor's branch of the profession is long-standing and one we have valued. The Queensland Law Society's records include your first communication with us, a letter accepting an invitation to lunch with the President and Council on the occasion of your admission on 2 February 1977. There's no such thing as a free lunch, and you have more than repaid your contribution to the Society in the decades since. In addition to your work on our journal, as a judicial officer, you have been a generous contributor to our professional development events, regularly presenting papers at our conferences. In 2006, the Society was honoured when you accepted our offer of honorary membership. On this valedictory occasion, I can do no better than repeat some words from the President's letter to you at that time, which noted that honorary membership was only offered to those very few whose record of dedication to both the profession and the broader community stamps them as a person of integrity, professional excellence and example. The people of Queensland have been the beneficiaries of your decision to serve on this court, where your integrity and professional excellence have enhanced the administration of justice. Your example continues to inspire the solicitors of Queensland, particularly the women among us, and we wish you well on this occasion of your retirement from the court. May it please the court.
Justice Lyons.
Chief Justice, distinguished guests all, I'm deeply honoured and indeed humbled by the attendance of so many of you here today, both in person in the adjoining courts, on the video link. Thank you. I'm particularly delighted that 3 of my sons, family and many other friends have been able to attend virtually from all around the world and around Australia. Well, February next year will mark 50 years since I commenced my law studies at UQ. So I'm outing some of my colleagues as to how old they are. Amazingly, many of my judicial colleagues here on the bench were my contemporaries at law school in the early 70s. And I also note some of the barristers present were also at law school at the same time. My judicial colleagues have included Justices Keane, Sofronoff, Morrison, Philip McMurdo, Justice Jackson, and retired judges Margaret McMurdo and Margaret Wilson. They were all with me in the early 70s at law school, and it has been a particular pleasure to have been able to serve on the bench with all of you. I also acknowledge Justice Greenwood of the Federal Court and Federal Circuit Court Judge Purdon Sully, who were also students in those early days at UQ. Like all careers, my years in the legal profession have presented me with some challenges, but in the scheme of things, they are insignificant. I only highlight some of those challenges so that I can recognise those people who have played a pivotal role in my legal career and so that I can thank them for their support. Firstly, I was blessed with a wonderful start in life with a large and loving family and a good education. The unfailing support of my parents and my 8 siblings has held me in good stead and meant that I was well supported for what lay ahead. As the Chief Justice has noted, I met my husband Peter in the first 6 months at uni in 1972 and thank him for the many decades of love and support. I also want to acknowledge my fellow women students from the early 70s. there were very few of us in the law school, and we stuck together in those early days and have stuck together ever since. Some of you have been able to be present, which is a particular bonus. It was certainly a challenge to find articles in 1975. I wrote to every law firm. I got one reply offering me an interview, and I gratefully accepted. I had wonderful articles with Andrew Knott from Cross and Burn, and I'm grateful for his presence here today. I also acknowledge how much I learned from Peter Channell in those early days. Juggling family and work was indeed a challenge, and there were very few options for professional full-time childcare in the 70s, and I was grateful for the part-time work, as many women do today, juggling their families at university as both a lecturer and a tutor. It was really the only option in those days. But it gave me the opportunity for further study and for voluntary work. I can't stress enough how much I learned from voluntary work. I learnt how to read balance sheets, how to interview people, and it also meant that I was able to really enjoy those early years with my boys. Thankfully, now both men and women have greater flexibility for part-time work and indeed options for extended family leave to enable them to have the same enriching and rewarding experience. And I'm particularly delighted that so many young men are taking time off to have time with their families in those early years. I accept that my pathway to the court was unconventional, as has been noted by many. I have to acknowledge how much I learnt in those early days from my years on the tribunal, and I can't acknowledge sufficiently how much I learned from my fellow members, particularly the doctors, social workers, other lawyers, psychologists and psychiatrists, who taught me the importance of listening and how to wait patiently for an answer and not to leap in and fill a silence. Many of you are here today. You have supported me for over 26 years, and I thank you for what you taught me. Then there was 21 years ago the appointment as President of the Guardianship Administration Tribunal. That involved setting up a new tribunal from scratch, and it was challenging. I think it was the hardest thing I've ever done, and that includes starting on this court. It was at that time I made a commitment to stay fit and to stay sane, and I thank my 5 a.m. gym colleagues. You've kept me fit, sane, grounded, and we've had a lot of fun, so thank you. I also must thank the then Attorney-General Matt Foley, the Honourable Matt Foley, for the confidence he had in me and the support he provided and continues to provide to so many. I also wish to acknowledge the enormous support of my Deputy Presidents Susan Gardner and Ron Joachim, and my wonderful registrars, the late Liz Knight and Robin Hill. We worked as a team, and it was a delight to work in such a collegiate way. The Honourable Rod Welford ultimately became Attorney-General, and then the Honourable Linda Lavache. I was appointed by the Honourable Linda Lavache, and thank her for giving me the honour of being able to serve on this court. In those gap days, I had to work closely with 3 inspiring and legendary Attorneys General, and I want to recognise not only their support and encouragement of me at that time, but their diligence and hard work. I thank each of them for the role they played, as well as their vision and foresight. When I joined the court over 15 years ago, the bench was very different. Only 3 judges remain from that bench that I joined: the Chief Justice, Justices Philip McMurdo and Mullins. Their support and friendship has been a constant during the last 15 years, and I am deeply grateful to each of them. I also wish to thank retired judges Margaret McMurdo, John Byrne, Ken McKenzie and John Hellman, as well as Margaret White, for their advice, wisdom and guidance in those early days and for their support. I also want to, at this point, particularly thank the criminal bar. I have a great fondness for the criminal bar, and in those early days when I hadn't been in a criminal court for a number of decades, they were amazingly supportive and helpful, and I cannot acknowledge enough how much the criminal bar mean to me. I must acknowledge also and pay tribute to the current judges of this court, all of whom are incredibly hardworking. They all willingly assume an enormous workload, and it can be unrelenting at times. I think in the early days it was very rare to have a weekend off. I think at times the busiest car park in the city on a Sunday is here at the Supreme Court. Can I say that my time on the court has been a happy one, particularly under the current Chief Justice? During my time on the court, as has been alluded to, there are two things that I'm proudest of. First, I wish to say that the thing I was particularly proud of was the united stand the judges of this court took during the troubled 12 months in 2014 and 2015 when this court's independence was threatened. I particularly acknowledge not only the integrity but the principled leadership of the then President Margaret Murdo and the then Senior Judge Administrator John Byrne. When the records of that time are released in decades to come, I know you will join in that admiration. Secondly, I am enormously proud of the commitment of the judges of this court to do what was possible to stay open and functioning during COVID. From the first lockdown in March of 2020, the response of the judges was clear. We were united in our desire to continue to function in the most appropriate way for as long as possible. That commitment remains. I announced my resignation at a time when I thought we were out of the woods. Within weeks, it's all come back. But I know that we have good strategies in place, and as was recently said at a meeting, everyone knows what they have to do. The strategies are there, everyone adjusts. It's almost become the new normal. So I'm sure under the wonderful leadership of the Chief Justice and the new Senior Judge Administrator, that will continue. I also want to mention in particular Justices Martin Burns and John Bond, who were great innovators and instigators of new ways of doing things during those early days. They put in an enormous number of extra hours to achieve that. I also wish to acknowledge the enormous cooperation that the Chief Justice has already mentioned from the DPP, the Legal Aid, the Law Society, the Bar, Police and Corrective Services. It was wonderful to work together. Of course, no acknowledgement can be done without mentioning the extraordinary efforts of Julie Steele, not only during the recent challenges, but in her everyday efforts as well. Her knowledge, competence and experience are extraordinary, and she was ably supported by Amanda O'Brien and Darren Davies and all the registry staff. I particularly wish to mention the IT staff, particularly during those early COVID days, who were juggling old technologies and trying to adapt to emerging technologies on the run. I also wish to acknowledge the bailiffs. The bailiffs were under pressure during that time, trying to adapt, and I'm grateful for the role they played. I have always been grateful for the assistance of the bailiffs, particularly during those long criminal trials. They are the eyes and ears of the court and are ever vigilant. I will miss not only their professionalism, but their camaraderie and sense of humour. Thank you to my wonderful associates over the years and to my executive assistant, Lynn Klein. Can I particularly thank Janine Mitchell, the Chief Justice's executive assistant, who makes all of this appear seamless, but she's been working on this for weeks. There will be even more changes in this court over the coming years because, having outed the age of some of my colleagues, there will be a number of judges who will reach compulsory retiring age in the coming years. So there are lots of changes afoot and there will be challenges ahead. But I know you all love a good challenge, as do I. I've also learnt that inevitably during challenging times, we learn so much, particularly about ourselves, but it's also simply amazing that on each challenge along the way, incredible people emerge to assist. I think you'll all know that the people who've come to assist you during challenging times. In this regard, I want to particularly thank Peter and our 4 sons, of whom I am enormously proud. They have supported me every inch of the way. They are all men of not only intelligence, but more importantly, men of great compassion and integrity. I'm also justifiably proud of my 2 daughters-in-law, who are incredibly capable and intelligent women and are a very welcome addition to our family. I, of course, adore my grandsons Henry and Charlie, who've watched the proceedings via Pexit from my chambers, so that when they're bored, which I'm sure is now, they can look at the diggers, cranes and trains at the Cross River rail construction. My thanks to you all for the honour you have shown me by your presence today. Thank you.
And we do have morning tea, but I urge you to socially distance while eating those scones or whatever it is. Let the proceedings be recorded. Adjourn the court.
Silence, all rise. The court is adjourned.